All stand, please. All persons having anything to do with this sitting of the Supreme Court of Tasmania, draw nigh and give your attendance. Please be seated.
Your Honour, just before we resume with Mr Gilmore, I omitted, as usual, to tender a document yesterday afternoon. I just wanted to formally tender it. It was that last screenshot that we took with Dr Marsden Smedley, the one that showed the line between the Permian mudstone and the Triassic sandstone, etc. If you please.
Yes, thanks, Mr Reid.
Yes, thank you, Mr Gilmore. We're dealing with what's been marked as MG1. It's photo 0009 in document 101, Mr Gilmore, and you're dealing with aspects of this photograph which indicate to you whether or not this photograph might indicate a point of origin for a fire. So you've already dealt with aspects to the left, in the top left corner of the photograph. Can you continue, please?
Yes, okay. Mr Tempone, if we zoomed in on that last green circle, perhaps. Yeah, that's good. If we could. And if we could move down a little bit, please.
I think we're going to need to go back to MG1 to be able to move down, aren't we?
Oh, okay.
Yes, sorry. Go back to MG1, please. And
so that the area of the lowest green circle, I think, is where we've finished.
Yes.
So if we start again in that area of that green circle and move. Okay, so further down from that last green circle, Mr Tempone, if you went down, yeah, stop there. Just to the left there, there's a small rock, again, which shows fire approaching from the left after having come from above that. So there's a trail of fire there.
Could we put a cross there, please?
Which peters out as it moves down the page.
That cross is in the right position to illustrate the evidence you've just given, Mr Gilmore?
I think so. That identifies that rock.
Yes. Continue, please.
If we go down to the bottom of the large rock there to the right, the right-hand side of that across to the left-hand side, the bottom perhaps quarter of the rock, if we draw a circle around that.
In that area, Mr Gilmore?
Well, we can do it in two areas. That will be fine if we continue that circle. There's just a couple of things I wanted to point out here. And if we did the same on the other left-hand side of the rock in a similar fashion, where those three little rocks are adjacent to it, yeah, that's fine. And so the right hand of those red circles shows that sloping manner with fire having been burning for some time under the rock there. And the left-hand side shows fire approaching up into the, going upwards on the photo, if you like, and petering out in between those two little rocks.
Could you put a 1 and a 2 on those two circles, please, Mr Tempone, so we can identify them? That's a 2. That one's the 2. So the 1 is the first one that you referred to, and the 2 is the 2.
Yep.
Correct?
Happy with
yes.
that. Yep.
Can you continue, please?
Yes. If we go down to the clump of grass in the bottom left of the photo, yeah, if we circle that area and now down into the corner of the photo and back around, yeah, just keep going, form a circle. That's good. Thank you. And that shows fire having approached from the bottom left, as is shown by some of the damage to the grass and some of the grass that's remaining. Whereas, for instance, in the smaller rock in the bottom of the photo, you can see in particular there's two small blades of grass, which, if the fire had come from right to left, would have been consumed during that movement, but they are not, which would suggest the fire in fact went from bottom left towards top right of the photo.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so perhaps if we go to the top and start another one. So if we went, Mr. Temponi, up about the middle centre top of the photo, there is a stick there, up higher, 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 thank you. Yeah, so that stick there shows fire having approached from the bottom of that stick. So yeah, fire moved towards the stick from where that circle is.
So the stick is above and slight to the left of the circle.
Yes, that's correct.
We put an arrow then within the circle. No, leave the circle there. Just put an arrow from within the circle up to the bottom of the stick. Yeah, I think Mr. Gilmore, is that arrow in the right place?
Yes, that's representative of what
thank
occurred.
you.
And
that shows what?
And that shows that fire moved from the bottom of the bottom right of the stick towards the top left. So it shows movement of fire there. Just to the right, oh, sorry.
Yep, you ready, Mr. Temponi? Yes.
Yes, just to the right of that is the rock with the dark staining, and that rock shows that there has been some fire approaching that rock or burning for some time from the bottom of the rock, as it's shown in the photo. Why I made that little qualifying statement is if you look to the right, there's significant amounts of ash, and it's likely that some larger pieces of wood have been burning on the surface there. And if we go down to the left, there is a lump of charcoal down, yeah, that one there. And if we circle that one, that shows having burning for an extended period of time. It also shows an unburnt area on the bottom there of that piece of wood, and some unburnt grasses as well, which is not consistent with fire having moved into that area from below.
Put a C next to that, please. Thank you. Yes, continue, please, Mr. Gilmore.
So there's nothing there showing direction. Just at the bottom of cone 20 is a clump of grass there, which shows a little bit of burning on the bottom side.
And what does that indicate?
Consistent with fire moving from perhaps bottom right of that circle towards top left of that circle.
Thank you.
You can see it has some shape where fire's impacted there. That larger rock demonstrates not much. To the right of cone 20 is actually sitting on that little rock there. Yeah, so underneath the cone there's a stone. And similar to before, if you look, the fuel to the right of that stone is consumed. The fuel to the left is not, and showing that fire moved from right to left in the area of that stone there. Down below that circle, there's another rock if we come down a bit. So there's a stick there and a rock. So if we can circle the end of that stick where that's burnt. And that rock there, yep, that's good. So you can see there's no fuel on the top left of that rock, as if fire has come down towards that rock from there. Whereas the stick shows damage to the top right of that where grass is burnt, and you can still see the burnt grass there. If we go, there's nothing trickling fire there. So if we go down further to the left, Mr. Temponi, yeah, stop there. That area of burning there is what I would like to circle. Yes, that's, yep, if you could do something like that, that's perfect. And that shows some fire moving into that area from the left and progressing and going up to the right. You can see the trail there of burning, and you can see also that it's totally insulated by unburnt fuel around to the right hand side. There is a large rock to the left of that. If we could just circle that.
Let's put a cross on it, please.
A cross on it, okay.
Thank you.
And that appears to have moved, so it doesn't appear to be in its original situ. And there is, to the top right of that, there appears to be some charcoal in what I might call the wall of the hole. So there's if you go to the right, right, and then down, yep, that black area there, probably wouldn't mind if we could enlarge that and have a look, but it's, to me, it looks like it may well be charcoal sitting in the wall of that hole there. And I'd be interested to enlarge that in
Can we enlarge that
resolution if we could.
Zoom in on that.
And I'm also going to ask you shortly to zoom in on the top of the hole as well, above the X, where that dark bit is there. I'd like to have a look at both of those areas enlarged a bit if we could, please. Not sure if it could, no, sorry, further to the left.
Can we go back to the original image and get a new screenshot up, please?
Sorry, what's the reference for that?
It's Doc 101 0009. Right, if we can take a screenshot of that area, please. Now, first of all, Mr. Gilmore, the area that you thought might have been charcoal, what do you say?
Yeah, I think the upper part of that, sorry, I'm looking in the bottom centre of the photo. The upper part of that it appears to be different to the lower part of the dark area, and then there appears to be a hole to the bottom right. So perhaps if we circle all that, and I comment on that, that might be useful. So the upper part appears to be wood material that's burnt, I would say, and the bottom part, sorry, the middle of the darkness appears to turn into dirt and rocks, and then the bottom part appears to be a hole. So I would assume from that that some wood is burnt where that hole part is in the bottom.
Okay. And the area above?
The area above that, the dark area?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks to just be soil that's been affected by a fire.
Right, now, does anything seen in that screenshot have assist you in forming an opinion as to whether this area, shown in the screenshot, could be the point of origin for a fire?
No.
Thank you. Attend to that. Now, can we go back to MG2, please? Sorry, MG1. Yes. Now, there are a lot of marks on that page, Mr. Gilmore. Do any of them assist you with a point of origin for this fire?
No.
Are you able to assist the court with the likely timing of any of those things which you have identified as to when they occurred?
In relation to what? In relation to each other or in relation to something else?
As to each other. As to when each occurred. Are you able to say as to when any of these, for example, let's take the blackening on the rock at the top, the first marking you made. Are you able to say when that is likely to have occurred?
In relation to what?
Sorry. In relation to time, did it?
What?
Oh, sorry, in relation to the time the photograph was taken.
Sometime prior.
Yes, clearly.
I'm sorry,
Well,
I got the
answer. All right.
You don't need to object.
All right, I withdraw that. Thank you. Could the witness please be shown document 101-0006? Now, you see in the front of that photograph a tussock.
Yes.
Your report indicates that your opinion is that the fire is moving from the bottom left of that photograph into the tussock. Now, Dr. Marsden-Smedley gave evidence that a very, very low trickling fire may have reached the clump and then it burnt into the clump, picked up intensity in the clump, so it's burnt more completely towards the bottom left-hand side of that clump. His view was that showed that the fire had come from around the area of marker 20 towards the tussock. Do you agree with that opinion of his?
No, I don't.
Why not?
The tussock has been impacted by fire from the bottom left, and that is shown by two things: the height of the relative burning of the stalks, so more heat is impacted from the bottom left, and the protection of fuel on the back of that clump. So if you look at the clump, it contains some green material. It has some moisture which to burn, we have to heat things up, dry them out, they give off gas and the gas burns. So if you look in the bottom left of that tussock, fire has come into there. It's affected all of the front of the tussock, if you like, where the fire has come to it, and the back has actually been protected by the mass of material, some dead, some green, as the fire's moved into it.
Thank you. Could we have, please, document 157? Now, in the top left-hand corner of that photograph, you will see a rock with a circle beneath it and some staining. what is your opinion as to whether or not that is a fire sign for a running fire?
The problem with that rock is it's sloping, so it could give false indication.
And your opinion as to whether that shows a running fire is what?
I can't tell from that photo. It doesn't appear to. The surrounding vegetation is still intact, so the fire has been pretty small at that stage.
Yes.
Sorry,
Sorry.
that's an assumption. The flame height is not very high. It's not a very intense fire at that stage. It has been burning for some time though.
Yes, but please.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Reid. Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Honour. Now, Mr. Gilmore, can we just get some issues of sequence and nomenclature cleared up? You've actually prepared 4 reports in relation to this fire, haven't you? So take them in order. The first one you prepared was dated 19 March 2019.
Yes, yep.
And that one appears as attachment 6 to the second report, which is dated 24 August 2020, correct?
Yes, correct.
Then your third report was a very short one dated 4 February 2021, and it deals with an issue of steam.
Oh, yes, the one page. Yep.
There's only one page, I think. And then most recently, your fourth report was dated the 9th of May 2021, and it deals with your response to some of the evidence that's been given to His Honour earlier in the trial, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, before I get into the reports, I just want to explore with you some of the issues about your qualifications that Mr. Reid took you to yesterday.
Yes.
And you said that the fire investigation training that you've undertaken or that you've provided over the years has followed, forgive me for using this word, but it follows a mantra of path, origin, cause. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
So in terms of the training that you've had or the training that you've given in relation to fire investigation, you've been trained and you've given training firstly to look for signs of the path of a fire.
Yes.
And then you work backwards along the signs of the path of the fire to try and determine the area of origin.
Yes.
And then within the area of origin, you try and assess what the probable cause of the fire might have been.
Yes.
Now, within an area of origin, there's 2 sub-areas, and I'd ask you to tell me whether I'm correct about this. Firstly, within an area of origin, there'll be an area of confusion.
The area of confusion is a term from the 90s, which came from the original work that came here from America and hasn't been used, to my knowledge, for a good while in our training,
Okay.
like perhaps 20 years or something like that, Mr. Armstrong.
All right. And then separately from the area of origin, there's also the actual point of origin where the ignition in fact occurred.
Yeah.
And sticking for the moment with the notion of an area of origin as opposed to an area of confusion, firstly, are they the same thing?
No.
Okay, what's the difference between an area of origin, as you use that term,
Yes.
and an area of confusion as you understand that term to be used?
So an area of origin would be where there's signs that the fire has moved out of an area. So in your survey of the area, you're confident that it came from in there. And then we talked about grass fall, for instance. So if a fire starts here and moves out, the grass will fall in towards that place that it comes. So it's the grass stem sticks like this, the fire hits it, it falls as the grass shrinks.
Okay.
And it falls on unburnt ground, so it's still intact.
Can I just, all right, so let's just work with that for the moment. The area of origin you've identified as the area from which you can be confident a fire has started. That area from which you can be confident a fire has started is by definition going to have involved a fire in its earliest stages, isn't it?
Yeah, it needs an ignition source.
Yep.
Yes.
And absent situations of somebody using an accelerant, that fire in its early stages is going to be a very low intensity fire, isn't it?
Yes.
In its very early stages, in the kind of situation that we're discussing in this case, we're talking about some flames that might not be that much bigger than what you would get from a match.
Correct.
And those flames in their early stages will be slowly finding fuel and moving in different directions, won't they?
Yes.
And it's because of the likelihood of signs that the small flames will have been moving in different directions that the Americans at least use the phrase area of confusion, because there's no clear sign of direction for the fire overall.
Yes. Just to qualify that, they've changed. They now say specific area of origin, so they have a general area of origin and specific area of origin, and then a point. So,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's,
Now,
sorry, I've misled you.
no, that's all right. Thank you for clarifying. Now, in terms of your personal training, Mr. Gilmore, your training is in that path, origin, cause process, isn't it?
Yes.
You're not trained in performing the predictive modelling to work out where a fire might go in future. Rather, your training is to work out where it's come from.
No, actually, I do have training in that.
Right.
I have. There is extensive information that isn't in that summary CV, and some of those things are the elements that make up an incident management team, planning officer, operations officer and logistics officer. I hold qualifications in all of those. The planning officer, a summary of their role is to gather information on what's happening and forecast what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
I'm sorry, go on.
sorry, and then the incident controller role is to oversee all those people in their roles as well.
Right.
So the specific thing that springs to mind is situation officer training, which I did many years ago, and also a burning training called fire management techniques, in which you study the effects of slope, weather, and predict a fire that you're going to light, which is very important to be across that.
Okay. As the situation manager or the incident controller for a large and complex fire, your role would be to engage the assistance of specialist fire behaviour modellers, correct?
Yes.
And engage the assistance of the specialist meteorologists.
Yes.
You mentioned that your career started in forestry. Do you have any qualifications in botany?
Only the plant identification, survey techniques, those sorts of things with regard to managing forests.
Have you ever been involved in the preparation of peer-reviewed studies examining fuel strata types in forests in southeastern Australia?
No.
Right. Ever been involved in studies into fuel loads and their modelling in southeastern Australia?
Yes.
Okay, when was that?
As both a forest officer and a fire management officer, part of the role is to assess the fuels that are in the landscape, and so one of my roles in the past was to draw up a strategic fire management plan for a parcel of state forest areas, a district if you like, and that involves the assessment of fuels using the early stages actually of the Total Fuel Hazard Guide.
Okay, and where was that area that you were mapping?
Central Victoria.
Right, which area of central Victoria? Around Bendigo or across towards the Halkwa Valley or what?
No, it's areas including the ranges over to the west of Bendigo and to the south of Bendigo, and the areas around Bendigo, and then some of the shorter mallee type areas in the north.
All right, thank you. Now, can we start then with your first report, by which I mean the 2019 report that's the annexure to your 2020 report.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Now, your 2020 report is Court Book 15, and the annexure that I'd like to start with appears at, starts at Court Book page 0313. I'm sorry, I think I said attachment 6, it's attachment 5. Now, if Mr. Temponi could please take us to Court Book page 0316, and in fact, can we start with 0315? You see the introduction there, Mr. Gilmore. I take it it's just through a word formatting glitch that the paragraph numbering starts at paragraph 287?
It may be what I did, Mr. Armstrong, was to attach the first report to the second report, so it may be, so that's been lifted out of the first report.
Yes.
Sorry, the second report, where it was as an attachment. So yes, it's sequential through the attachments by just asking the document to number sequentially.
I see, yes. And so just to be clear, your 2020 report finishes at paragraph 286, and that explains why this attachment to it starts at paragraph 287.
There may be some attachments after this report as well. So it was attached as an attachment, if you
yes. Like. Okay. Now, at paragraph 298 on page 0316, you explain to the court that, perhaps we can just go up a little bit, please, Mr. Temponi. Thank you. So the context, you refer there to Mr. Thomas's previous report, and then you say that in November 2018, you, and I think, well, you say we, you mean yourself and Mr. Fabian Crowe, correct?
Yes, this first one was a joint report.
All right, thank you. And so just in relation to that attendance by yourself and Mr. Crowe, could Mr. Temponi please bring up Court Book document 200? And you needn't be concerned, Mr. Gilmore, because, believe it or not, your handwriting is actually better than mine. So there won't be any criticism on that account. Now, I just again want to be clear about what's happened here. You said in your report that you attended at White Hills Road on the 18th and 19th of November 2018. Mm-hmm. This page appears to be dated the 19th of November.
Oh, yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, it does appear, yeah.
And now, if we can then, so this is Court Book page 0543, and just to give you the context, can we now go to Court Book page 0547? And now you see on the left-hand side that these are your notes from the 20th of November 2018. And now lastly in this bundle of notes, could we go to page 0561? And these are a third set of notes, this time dated 11 December 2020, correct?
Yes, it looks like I've made a mistake and crossed that out.
Okay, that's okay. So just to be clear, the attendances in 2020 were on the 19th and 20th of November, not the 18th and 19th, correct?
Oh, I'm now unsure, sir. I would.
Well, as best you can recall from your notes.
From the notes, it's different to what's in the report. The photos would actually have metadata, which would assist. They would show what day photos were taken.
I don't think we have the original photos, Mr. Gilmore. We've only got the PowerPoint that you sent.
Right. There was a photo log also, wasn't there? Whether that's a help.
Can you tell me where the photo log was?
The photo log was on display yesterday. I was shown it and asked, was it my work?
Well, could we go to document 201 in the court book, Mr. Temponi? Is that the one you mean, Mr.?
Yes, yeah, that's the one I was thinking. Yeah, but no, it doesn't seem to have the date. Just has numbers.
Okay. Well, let's just go through your notes then. Can we go back to document 200, Mr. Temponi? And can we go back to page 0543? Thank you. Now, if we can just zoom out a little bit, Mr. Temponi, it seems here, Mr. Gilmore, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that between 12:45, it seems that you perhaps arrived in Hobart at around 12:45 on the 19th of November, and then you drove from the airport to 242 White Hills Road.
Yes, and it looks like at that about 15:30 I was starting to
Yes.
familiarise myself with the site. Yeah, it
Yep.
says,
Okay. So I take it, and again, I'm just trying to refresh your memory by reference to your notes.
Mhm.
But when you arrived, I assume that you were met at the airport by Mr. Thomas and Mr. Knight.
I don't recall if Mr. Thomas was at the airport.
Okay.
I think Mr. Knight has been our contact on that day.
Okay. And then Mr. Knight drove you out to White Hills Road.
Yes, yeah, I think we got a hire car later that day. I think my memory is, yeah,
We'll come to the hire car in a moment. I think your memory is broadly correct in that regard, Mr. Gilmore. So you were met at the airport by Mr. Knight, and he drove you out to White Hills Road, and at about 15:30 you started to familiarise yourself with the site.
Yep.
And then if we can go down, please, at about 15:53 or 3:53 in the afternoon, you had a fairly long discussion by the looks of it with Ms. Barrett, and your notes of that conversation go over the next couple of pages. If we can just scroll through those, please, Mr. Temponi. Just pause there. Now, where were you when you were having that discussion with Ms. Barrett, Mr. Gilmore? Were you in the house, out on the deck, somewhere else?
Yeah, she was, basically I said, can you show me what happened? And so there was a bit of walking around during that time.
Okay.
So I think from memory it would have started around the house, progressed to various places, including the area of the log, the septic, the stump, the horse yard, those sorts of things, and the driveways as well.
All right. And then that process with Ms. Barrett seems to have lasted until about 4:35 p.m. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it says there. Yeah, and that would be it took a while. Yeah.
And then, do you recall whether Mr. Thomas was with you in the car as you then drove to Inala Road with Mr. Knight?
No, I don't, but it's likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the best of your recollection, at least, Mr. Knight was still doing the driving of you, at least, as you went to Inala Road and then Dunalley.
I think so. Yes.
You went down to Primrose Sands and then back to Sorell.
Yes.
Okay. And the arrangement then was that you were going to meet with some of the other lawyers the following morning?
No.
Sorry, no, it's the following afternoon.
Following afternoon, yes.
Around 3 p.m. And then if we can go down a little bit further, at 5:50 Mr. Knight then drove you back to the airport and you picked up the hire car.
Yeah, that makes sense, yep.
Right. And then you stayed overnight at Richmond.
Yes.
And then 7:30 the next morning you left Richmond. And can you tell His Honour what the numbers next to the Depart Richmond are? 351 A3 333. Is that the?
I think that's the route that we took. I think the road numbers.
All right. Now, can
I think from some memory there may have been some issue with roadworks or something too that day.
All right. Now, was Mr. Crowe with you overnight in Richmond?
Yes.
Right. But he hadn't been with you the first day?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Crowe was there as well, was he?
Yes.
So, can we go back to the start of this document, please, Mr. Temponi? So, although Mr. Crowe's not mentioned there, he was in fact with you right through that process.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, and then on the 20th, the next day, could we go to page 054?
Oh, sorry, I need to qualify. Some of the
Stop there, please, Mr. Temponi.
some of the walking around, he may not have been. It may have been Melissa Barrett and myself may have gone to the horse yard or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. That's
All right. So we see the
quite right.
bottom of this page refers to 20th of November, 7:30. You left Richmond, and can we go to page 0547? You then arrived at 242 White Hills Road at about 8:21 in the morning, and this time you do mention Mr. Crowe.
Oh yes.
Okay. Now, on that second day, that was the day that you did the excavation of the area of the old stump, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, firstly, having looked at these two sets of notes, does that refresh your memory that it was probably the 19th and the 20th, not the 18th and the 19th that you attended?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But they were two sequential days. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I would assume I would have checked the report closer than the notes, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay. And then when you were there on the second day, this time with Mr. Crowe, was there anybody else with you at White Hills Road during that visit?
No.
So just to be clear, Ms. Barrett was not there?
No.
And none of the lawyers who'd engaged you were there?
No.
And then it was on that day that you really started to undertake what we might call the principal investigation as opposed to the site familiarisation exercise?
Yes. Yeah. More of a survey style.
Yep. All right. And now lastly, just while we've got this document open, can we go to page 0561? This is the notes from December 2020. 0561, please, Mr. Temponi. Thank you. And now here it looks like about 8 a.m. you had a meeting at Dobson Mitchell Allport with a number of lawyers, correct?
Yes.
Now I take it SK means Mr. Knight.
Yes, that would mean that to me as well. Yep.
KR means Mr. Reid.
Yes.
What does LR mean?
That would be Lisa.
Lisa Rankin, is that right?
Yes.
And do you recall who B is?
I assume that would be Bob.
Right. Well, okay.
Mr. Brewer.
Mr. Brewer, thank
Yes.
you. And E is Ellie? Is that
Ellie Law, I think.
right?
Yep.
Thank you. And then you seem to have been in conference between about 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And I take it that by 1 p.m. you were back at 242 White Hills Road, re-inspecting the area of the old stump, and then you moved on to Warmby Creek North and some other places, is that right?
Yes.
So you spent the whole day from 8 a.m. through until catching a flight at about 5:15 with the legal team for the first defendant.
Yes.
All right. And then subsequent to that December 2020 attendance here in Tasmania, you then prepared, I think, your second report, which dealt with the issue of steam. That was the one dated 4 February.
Oh, yes.
And then most recently, as we've already discussed, you prepared your May report, the fourth and final report for the proceeding.
Yes.
Okay, so I've got that sequence broadly correct in terms of the chronology of the work that you've done.
Yes, there were those qualified dates, which
Right. Now, could Mr. Temponi please take us back to, if that document hasn't been tendered, Your Honour, I tender it.
Thank you. What's the navigation path to that document in the court?
That's document 200, Your Honour.
Thank you.
I tendered that, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me. Now, Mr. Temponi, could you please take us back to document 15 and Mr. Gilmore's first report, which, as I've said, started at page 0313. And can we go, please, to page 0319? And go down to paragraph 314 and let us see that to the bottom of the page. Now, Mr. Gilmore, you describe in the 2019 report, starting at paragraph 314 and going on for some time, essentially 4 phases to the what I called before the principal investigation. Can I just list them for you firstly, and then we'll go through them in a little more detail. The first phase was a walk around the property during which you identified 2 potential areas of origin. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
there was a familiarisation around the property, and then the next day there was the loop of the extremities of the property in the forest to determine travel, and then a loop on the edge of the forest in the grassland, again looking for travel, and then alignment to the Fire Investigation Report.
Let's just take it.
Phases.
Let's just take it in phases, please, Mr. Gilmore. The first day that you attended with Mr. Knight and Mr. Thomas was something that your notes referred to as the site familiarisation exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Now, can I ask you to turn your attention to paragraph 315 of your 2019 report that appears on the screen?
Yep.
You say here that we commenced the first phase of a detailed examination, circling the house, etc. Now, was that the work that you did on the first day, or was this something that you did on the second day?
That's the second day.
Okay, so we had the site familiarisation on day 1,
Yep.
and the first phase on day 2 was the exercise that's described in paragraph 315, correct?
Yes.
And then can we go to paragraph 335? And there you describe the second phase, which was now yourself and Mr. Crowe, I assume, walking around within the areas that you'd identified during the first phase and trying to, again, get a better understanding of the direction of fire at the different locations that you examined.
Yes.
And then can we go to paragraph 337? The third phase was what you referred to a moment ago as the alignment. I take it here that you looked at the photographs that were reproduced as part of the TFS fire investigation report and tried to match them to the physical features that you could see around you.
Yes.
And then lastly, paragraph 339, the final part, I know that this is the 4th part of the examination on this day, was to excavate the site containing the old stump. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then just continuing with that 4th phase in paragraph 339, you say that you were excavating the site containing the old stump, and paragraph 340, the work that you actually did now was to locate and examine the area within the old stump and around the old stump.
Yes.
Correct? Right. Now, I just want to ask you about that work, Mr. Gilmore. Could Mr. Temponi please bring up document 201? And could we go to photograph 53? And perhaps just enlarge it a little bit. That'll do. Just go down a little bit, please, Mr. Temponi. Now, Mr. Gilmore, what we see in the photograph there, now bring it down to the centre of the screen, please, Mr. Temponi. That'll do, thank you. What we see there is obviously a pretty large shovel on the right-hand side, do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then can you identify the implement that seems to have a teal-coloured handle in the bottom left-hand corner of that photograph?
It appears to be a hammer.
Right, okay.
It may, yeah, I can't recall really. I'm sorry.
And can we go to photograph 58? I think we can agree that that seems to be an axe or an adze.
Yeah,
ADZE.
a matic in my
Matic.
terminology. Yep.
Right, thank you. And so I take it, Mr. Gilmore, that you and Mr. Crow used the shovel and the matic to break up the soil, start the excavation and dig down into the area that you were excavating?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, can we also just go back, please, Mr. Temponi, to photograph 47. And Mr. Gilmore, I take it that that's a photograph. Sorry, are you able to confirm from your recollection whether that's a photograph taken from the south side of the area where you understood the old stump to have been, looking essentially north or northeast towards one of the driveways on the property?
There are two stumps. So in later, as we got to see reference from other people, this became known as a spiky stump. I think it might have been referred to as a rhinoceros-shaped stump at some stage also. So,
Okay.
so that is one stump, the easternmost of two stumps that are close together.
Well, my question was actually just trying to get you to orient the photograph, Mr. Gilmore.
Oh yes, so that's looking towards the north. Yes.
North or northeast, looking towards one of the driveways.
Yes, the two driveways can be seen just in the top right, I think.
Okay, and Mr. Temponi, could we go to photograph 50? Sorry, before we move off this one, what we see there, Mr. Gilmore, is a new tree, agreed?
Yes.
And then that's the structure with the poles sticking out of the ground in a little circle, or partially formed circle of some stones. To the left of the photograph is a series of poles in the ground with some chicken wire between them, and that's an area that you understand to have been the burial site, the grave of one of Ms. Barrett's dogs. Is that right?
Yes, I think she told me that, yes.
All right. And could we go to photograph 53, please, Mr. Temponi? And I take this photograph is now taken from the north, looking towards the south or southwest, correct?
Yes.
And is that what we seem to be looking at here, as best I can make out from the photograph, is one hole that's been dug between the grave and the tree, is that right?
Yeah, so there's, in photograph 53, there's two holes. So there's one in the back,
Right.
about level with the tree, and then the one further towards the camera.
Okay. All right. Now, can we go up to photograph 51, please, Mr. Temponi? Now, the information for this photograph, Mr. Gilmore refers to it as the second stump.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you tell His Honour what is the second stump? Is it the rhinoceros stump, or is it the thing that your reports refer to as the old stump?
Yeah, it's the rhinoceros stump, if that's the terminology now. I think it was spiky at some stages in our reports, we called it.
Okay.
So I think we had the big log or the large log,
Mhm.
the old stump, and then the spiky stump.
Yes, okay. So this, what's referred to in these photographs as the second stump,
Yep.
is the spiky stump or something that was referred to as the rhinoceros horn
Yes, I
during the
think so.
trial. Okay, so can we go down to photograph 53 again, please, Mr. Temponi? And that photograph at 51 that I just showed you, Mr. Gilmore, which hole was that taken in?
The one at the rear.
Okay. And can we just go slowly down through the photographs, Mr. Temponi? We've got the second stump, keep going, second stump, old stump and second stump, just perhaps pause there. Again, the photograph that's fully displayed on that screen, Mr. Gilmore, we see a hole directly between the photographer and the trunk of the new tree. That's the hole for the second stump, I take it?
Yes.
Now, over to the left, the top left-hand corner of that photograph, there's a white rock leaning against the chicken wire, and is that then the second hole above that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, can we please just continue going down through the photographs? Now, pause there. At the top of that photograph, 58, Mr. Gilmore, I think we see the bottom of the new tree again, is that right? Where the cursor is at the moment?
Yes, that's, yep.
So that hole there, I take it, is the hole for the second stump.
Yes.
And at the head of the mattock, is that the excavation that you did for the first, sorry, the old stump?
Yes, that's the side of that, yeah.
Right, so did you say that's the site of the second hole that you dug?
No, that's the side of the old stump. Yeah.
Sorry, the side, S-I-D-E.
No, site, sorry, yes.
Yes,
Where the mattock is where the old stump is. In the rear of the photo is the spiky stump, or the rhinoceros one.
Okay, all right. So, again, just to be clear, photograph 58 shows the excavation that you did associated with the old stump, is that right?
Yeah, yes, in the foreground, yes.
All right, thank you. And if we go down to 59. Now, again, Mr. Gilmore, I need you to help me out here. What's the excavation that's shown in this photograph? We've got the excavation for the spiky stump up near the tree trunk at the top of the photograph. What are we looking at in the rest of this photograph?
In the right margin that's the area below that of the old stump.
So move the cursor down, please, Mr. Temponi. So that's the excavation that you did in respect of the old stump, is it?
Yes.
All right. And can we just scroll down past photograph 59, please, Mr. Temponi? These photographs then, keep going, please. Keep going, keep going. The rest of the photographs then seem to effectively have moved away from the area that you were digging, is that right?
Yes.
All right, so can we go back up to 58 and 59 and show them together, please, Mr. Temponi? Moves them across the page a bit. Now, can we take a screenshot of that whole screen, please, Mr. Temponi? That one looks like chicken pox. Now, Mr. Temponi, could you put the cursor on the top photograph at the base of the tree stump, tree trunk, I should say, and draw a big circle around that hole. And then do the same thing to the hole at the bottom of the tree trunk on the bottom photograph. Thank you. And now can we change colour to green, please, Mr. Temponi? Thank you. And can we put the cursor at the base of the mattock, and then can you draw a big circle around the area that looks to you like it's been excavated, and we'll ask Mr. Gilmore to confirm that it's right. Is that about it, Mr. Gilmore?
It is about it, yes.
And then in the bottom photograph, Mr. Temponi, I think, could you direct the cursor, please, Mr. Gilmore, to the area that's been excavated in the bottom photograph? Is it the bit at the very bottom of the image?
Yeah, the bit at the very bottom is the, if you like, the second part of excavating for the old stump.
Okay.
And I think the bit, yeah, so if we drew a sort of half circle down to the margin there, Mr. Temponi, from middle, yeah, if you went up and across and around to the corner of the photo on the bottom left.
No, out a bit further, Mr. Temponi, into the corner. That's it.
Yeah, that's fine. The excavation is in that area. Yep.
All right. Now, is that the same excavation as the one that's circled by green in the top photograph?
No, I think the other excavation might just show in the right margin, and I think you can see if you look in the top photograph, there's a root there. I think if you look in the right margin, you can see a white band, a stick, a white band, and then the root, which aligns with the top photograph. So a little half circle. If we went back to the edge, Mr. Temponi, up, and stopped and drew a circle out to the left, come up, and then back past that white rock there, and then to the margin. So in that area is the excavation, that bit of white dirt and that stick that can be seen in the top photo, I think.
All right, so can we just mark that screenshot as MG, I think we're up to number 5 or thereabouts. Thank you. Now, just so that we're clear what we're talking about here, Mr. Gilmore, the 2 red circles indicate the excavation for the spiky stump.
Mm-hmm.
The green circle on the top photograph and on the right-hand side of the bottom photograph show the excavation that you did in the location that you believed the old stump to be.
Yes.
And the green area indicated in the bottom left-hand side of the bottom photograph is a separate excavation that you did in connection with your investigation regarding the old stump, but it's, what, about 1 metre or 2 metres away from the first excavation for the old stump?
Yes, it's, yeah, I think probably, yeah, 2 metres would be a good estimate.
Now, just focusing on the, well, can we perhaps go back for starters to photograph 51 in document 201. Thank you. Now, it's very hard to tell, to get any sense of depth from a 2-dimensional image from a photograph. Would you agree, Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
So, doing the best one can from this 2-dimensional representation, would I be right in thinking that the excavation that's shown there looks like it might be down to about 200 mil depth?
Yes, I think that's right. And I would assume there's some mention in my notes about depth too, I'm not sure.
In fact, I perhaps should read the text myself. It says approximately 200 millimetres depth. Tuesdays. And could we go down to photograph 54, please? And this is now the completed excavation in respect of the hole for the spiky stump. And again, Mr. Gilmore, to the best of your recollection, perhaps it went down to about 300 mil by the time you finished.
Yeah, I've written 250, I think, Mr. Armstrong.
Okay, all right. And then if we could go back down to photograph 59, please, Mr. Tamponi. In fact, 58 and 59, can we show them again? The first excavation nearest the old stump looks like it was really just scraping some top dirt away. Is that right? So not a real excavation, just some scraping away of dirt. And then the second excavation in respect of the old stump that appears at the base of photograph 59, again, looks like it didn't go deeper than about 100 mil. Right?
That's right. And virtually just tracking the root as it disappears into the ground there.
I see. Okay.
Is what we were up to. Yes.
All right. Now, this area that you excavated between in the vicinity of the new tree and the dog's grave, was that, did you excavate in that area because Mr. Thomas or Mr. Knight had pointed it out to you the previous day when you'd been familiarising yourself with the site?
No. What we were trying to do was replicate excavations that have been done, pardon me, and make our own determinations about how far down these stumps were burnt into the ground.
Right.
Is what we're up to. So that second excavation may well have been an attempt to replicate the excavation that had been done and see the end of it.
Been done by whom?
By the initial investigators.
Cas Vice?
Yes.
And when you'd been there the previous day with Mr. Thomas and Mr. Knight, I assume, Mr. Gilmore, that the four of you, perhaps also with Ms. Barrett, went to this particular area and discussed that this was where the old stump was, and this was the area that had been excavated by the TFS and by Mr. Thomas in the past.
I think Mr. Thomas's excavation we learnt of it at a later date. I think that's.
So Mr. Thomas didn't tell you that he had excavated that area?
I don't remember that, but I remember it being slightly strange when a group of photos were given to us saying, well, actually, this has all been dug up.
Right.
I think that was on the next afternoon.
Okay, all right. Now, your purpose in undertaking those excavations was to test the hypothesis that was reported in the TFS report, that there had been an underground smouldering burn of a root that had been connected to the old stump, correct?
Yes.
When you were doing the digging, we see the mattock there and we saw the big shovel. How would you describe the soil that you were having to break up? Was it hard clay or loose, sandy stuff? It's not sandy. It's fairly clayey soil with quite a bit of rock through it. And in fact, I think the last photo shows that the stump is sitting on bedrock in one part of it. So it's pretty tough going, the digging there. Okay. And so we tend to loosen the soil and then scrape it out with our hands. Right, so loosen it with the mattock and the big shovel and then scrape out what you've loosened with your hands.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Can I ask you, Mr. Gilmore, in the course of your work over the years as a wildfire investigator, have you ever in the past investigated a smouldering root? Investigated the possibility that a particular fire had been ignited as a result of underground smouldering of a root system?
Yes.
Right. When was that?
Well, there's been various ones throughout, particularly south of Bendigo in the area there. So, period, probably from 1998 through to 2000 would be the most common time.
Right, and so I take it you had investigated what we might call smouldering root fire ignition events on several occasions over that period, is that right?
Yes.
And had you had to excavate a root system before doing the kind of work that you've described for this excavation?
Not really to this extent. So normally it's fairly obvious. So there's normally collapse associated with things I'd seen in the past.
Right, and so can I just test that notion of collapse for a moment? What you're describing there is the phenomenon of a smouldering burn working its way through a root system. As the root burns, it is effectively reduced to charcoal ash, and because the structure of the root is no longer there in the soil tends to collapse in over the top of it, collapse into the tunnel that the root that's left behind by the incinerated root.
Yeah, that's certainly a phenomenon that happens, yes.
Right, and it's a phenomenon that you were familiar with because you'd encountered it in the course of your investigations into smouldering root fire ignitions between 1998 and 2000.
Yes,
Right.
and over a broader context with fuel reduction burning, certainly, and the danger of burnt out stumps and people standing in them and they're full, like a bowl full of ash.
Right.
We might take the break, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes.
All right, we'll adjourn for 15 minutes.
Stand, please. Sorry, I'll stand.